darkness. She won't tell you why. Butterflies, 'cause they don't ever last. Stolen from the light by demons of the past. That's all the strange. She keeps on playing. Sunny days left me wondering. Oh, sunny days.
All right. Welcome. Podcast
7 or 8?
7, I believe.
7.
Welcome, Facebook. We are down a woman
Yep.
this evening. Cross had a little bug or something, so stayed home from school, and he is at home with Robin, but you never know, she may jump on Facebook. But she has absolutely no idea what we're doing right now,
No.
and you know that's really got to drive her crazy, right?
It's she might have a panic attack.
Yeah,
She
might.
could be here before we get done.
That is infinite possibilities.
Yeah.
There's no doubt
The
about it.
chances of that. So there's no one to wrangle us in tonight. There's nobody to keep us on track, and there's no one to cut us off in what would be considered an appropriate time limit.
Yes.
So, who knows? As infinite things can take place. But, I think we got some good stuff to talk about tonight. Infinite things can take place.
Hold
Oh, we're
on
playing
a
ourselves
second.
online.
Yeah, I think there was someone was saying something.
Oh,
to
somebody's
me.
talking to us? We're new at this live stuff, too, at the same time. So we're trying to see if anybody's talking to us while we're doing this.
Yeah, it's all quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all a bit much, if you ask me. But
Yeah.
Eric talked me into it, so here we are.
Here we are. We got lots of stuff
and,
going on.
Yeah, down. Robin, you need to pay attention to the Facebook because I can't really see it from here, so I don't know what people are saying or
I'm trying to look and see.
doing. There.
Is there people commenting? I think
No.
we're okay. I don't see anything. I got it on here. I'm looking at it right now.
All right.
So it's just confusing because it's delayed. But we were excited tonight because I think we got to take a little bit different approach tonight. Not that we prepared anything to say because we never really do that. But there are some topics that we've been kicking around throughout the week that are in the news, of the news.
Yeah.
And I think some of it started earlier in the week with some posts I put on Facebook and started a conversation with around some stuff and around some of the addiction stuff going on in Florida, treatments of addiction that's going on in Florida, and some of the uses of marijuana within that for opioid stuff.
Oh, Mary Jane.
Oh, Mary Jane. And the resurgence of Mary Jane.
Yes.
But in a different way. And then we had our I guess it was today or yesterday. Oh, Tricky Ricky got on, and
I believe it was yesterday.
it was yesterday. So our governor Rick Scott made a big announcement live on Facebook regarding some new initiatives, I guess you'd say, or they're calling them that at least, for the state of Florida and the state of emergency that they've, I guess, called out or claimed at this point in time. Are we going to play that? Listen to that, or-
yeah, we can do that. I can play it here.
It's a couple. He only talks for a couple of minutes out of it, I think.
Yeah.
Where-
Give me 1 second. I'm
Yeah.
just
you're-
inviting some other people on.
There we go. We're
Facebook.
inviting people to join. So we're trying to create a little bit more of a conversation tonight too, and see if anybody wants to come talk to us. But if you're just joining or logging in, this is the Restoration Radio podcast. We normally film, record, and then post. We're doing a simulcast recording at the same time with Facebook. Did a little bit of Instagram stuff earlier, and now we are recording and sharing and whatnot. So if you have any thoughts, comments, concerns, feel free to comment on the Facebook comments. I know we have, it looks like a couple people watching right now, but it could just be me. But anyway, we were chiming in about some stuff about this week that's going on in the news. We're going to listen to part of it in a little bit, but for those of you outside the state of Florida, where we are, Tampa is uniquely positioned in the state in a way that with our harbor and with where we are localized, that there is a good amount of what I would consider, it's kind of like I'm from Dallas. It's the same kind of place with Dallas and Houston and Texas, which we were just placed well for trafficking, placed well for drug transportation, and placed well for there to be major drug issues. And I think when I moved out here, and after I got clean, I realized very quickly how bad of a drug problem and addiction problem there is in the Tampa area. And so did Jason. So, that's been our work over the last decade, has been self-realization, self-awareness, and self-progression through our own stuff. And as we've done that, we've become better aware of what works, what doesn't work. Not that we know it all, because it's a progressive state for us too. But
it really depends on what your definition of works.
Yeah, what your definition of works is,
and to accomplish.
That gets into some I think we're going to kick around tonight is with some of this stuff. There's a lot of definitions. Here's a video. Yeah.
All right, so let's. We've been talking about the possible marijuana use and treatment of addiction, and that stirred up quite a big pot. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Pot. And then the governor really jumped into this here midweek and really kind of got me going a little bit. And I started really asking some questions on what we're doing, what's the old story, are we just reinforcing the old story, and what can we do to make some changes. And in that, looking at some of these things, we've learned quite a bit just here recently about the schedule classes of drugs and how marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug.
Right.
And opiates are a Schedule 2 drug, and how things are really beginning to flip-flop, but because the system, the way in which all things operate and regulate here in our country, has positioned itself to kind of really be in a place where they may not be able to deal with these things like they're saying they want to.
Yeah.
And so I think that what I saw in the governor's speech here yesterday was really some unauthentic communication in regards to what opiate addiction is, as well as who's fighting the war on opiate addiction, who's on the front lines of said crisis.
Yeah.
And then number 3, how is $50 million going to be used to continue to reinforce the old story and not allow us to break through the issues in life that are addiction and that are recovery and that are pain and suffering that we know personally as well as collectively that's out there. And we just want to join the conversation.
Yeah.
And we would like y'all to join the conversation with us as well. And, we'll go from there. We'll see what else, can be stirred up from this. Because just simply sitting back and not having a voice and not changing or using your voice, which changes the frequency of the possibilities of all things, just sitting back and saying, oh, it's the way it's always been, it's the way it's always going to be, there's nothing you can do about it, and nothing's ever going to change, and that is not a position of infinite possibilities, is it?
No. I think we saw that in some of the conversations we've seen already and heard with the interactions we've had, is that most everybody has a position with some of this stuff, but it's based off of old, what I would call old definitions that we've never gone back and questioned of, are these things defined properly? When we look at words like medicine, when we look at words like addiction, when we look at words like recovery, when we look at words like government, and does the current definition work for us, or have we just accepted that that's what it is based off what we've been told, or even when we talk about marijuana or drugs in general, and treatment, because it brings up typically a personal experience with something, positive or negative, that stimulates some type of internal conversation that leads us to our position, and in doing that, what normally happens is our scope of being able to see things gets very narrow, and so then most of the conversations stay in that limited space of, I'm pro pot, I'm anti pot, I'm pro police, I'm anti police, I'm pro government, I'm not pro government, I'm Democrat, I'm Republican, and it just turns into this, like we've seen with every topic that's been put out there right now. It's this back and forth limited conversation that never really gets anywhere, other than people just get pissed off and walk around angry all day. But there's no resolution, there's no expansion, there's nobody taking the initial step back to say, hey, I have an opinion, and it's a valuable opinion, as anybody's opinion would be, but maybe the first thing I need to do is take a step back and say to myself, maybe I don't know everything, and there's a possibility called maybe I'm incorrect or partially incorrect or limited in the space of understanding that I have. And in doing that, I just begin to enable myself to see things a little bit differently. And in that, hear people in their other positions at the same time differently, so that we can actually have an authentic conversation around what the real topics are, what the real issues are, what the real solutions are. And have we excluded solutions based on the fact that they're uncomfortable to us, or that they're possibly even unknown to us? And so, for me, that's what I've seen all week long, is just like, it's an immediate, bam, here's my opinion, click, I'm off. Right? I'm done. That's it. And if you say anything counter to that, then, we've seen it all the way up to the top, like, you're a son of a bitch, and you're this or that, and it goes all the way down to just personal conversations on Facebook. So, for me, that's, in looking at all this, that's what's important, is how do we get into a space called, let's question everything and see if it really is sitting in a place that is most optimal to deal with the situations and the issues at hand. AKA, let's just take addiction for one standpoint. Are we even talking about the same thing? When Governor Scott talks about addiction, is he talking about the same thing that you're talking about, that I'm talking about, that a doctor would be talking about, that someone who works at a treatment center or a psychologist would be talking about? Or are we all using the same word that means something totally different to each one of us based on our perspective? And how do we come together and better unify and define what that is, so that we can get out of this smog and actually address the real issue at hand?
Right. Cool. Well, here's
watch the video.
Let's do the video and listen to that, and then we'll go from there.
This issue. Earlier this year, I directed the Florida Department of Health to issue a public health emergency that allowed us, the state, to immediately draw down more than $27 million in federal grant funding, which is being used across our state. I also signed legislation to enhance criminal penalties for individuals who traffic these deadly drugs to help keep families safe. We made a commitment here in Florida to do everything possible to keep our families safe. Today, I'm proud to announce that during the upcoming legislative session, I'm proposing major legislation to combat opioid abuse. It will include the following proposals. First, we will fight to place a 3-day limit on prescribed opioids, unless strict conditions are met for a 7-day supply. This is a critical step toward limiting the chance of addiction and reducing the ability for dangerous drugs to spread into our communities. We will fight to require mandatory use of the Florida Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, a database that monitors controlled substances and helps healthcare workers make informed decisions before prescribing medicine to their patients. Requiring all healthcare professionals who prescribe or dispense medicine to participate in this program will help reduce addiction and make sure more resources are available to our law enforcement officers as they work to protect our communities. This legislation will also include reforms that will fight unlicensed pain management clinics, require continuing education courses on responsibly prescribing opioids, and create new opportunities for federal grant funding. I've talked to a lot, and we've talked to a lot of people all around the state about how to deal with this. And this is the proposals we're coming up with right now. I'm sure there's going to be, as you go through legislative session, there'll be more ideas, but making sure people understand when they're prescribing, the risk, making sure that you can have a limited supply of these opioids is a big deal. Using the database will be a big deal. In addition to these sweeping policy changes, I'm proposing more than $50 million to invest in investment to help our state fight this epidemic. This funding will include substance abuse treatment, counseling, and recovery services to give vulnerable individuals the help they need in their own communities. This also includes a major investment in the Florida Violent Crime and Drug Control Council, which supports local law enforcement agencies as they investigate drug abuse. One thing that I've watched, and I watch it with my family members, often what happens is who actually deals with the drug abuse is our law enforcement. And so, that's not their primary job, is to deal with the drug issue in our country, but they do. And so we're going to make a big investment in the Florida Violent Crime and Drug Control Council, which will help our local law enforcement. We know that the opioid epidemic is a challenging issue that requires a multi-focused approach. This is why my proposed legislation funding will help address multiple levels of this epidemic, from doctors and prescribers to state and community programs to law enforcement officers who are on the front line of this fight. Opioid abuse has taken the lives of too many Floridians, and it's almost every person now knows somebody that's impacted. And we're fully committed to finding additional ways to fight this crisis. I want to thank our Attorney General. When we got elected at the same time, and she has been a leader in whether it's fighting our pill mills, fighting synthetic drugs, fighting opioid abuse, and any legislation that's gotten passed, Pam has been a key member to make sure that happens. The legislation funding I am announcing today will further strengthen our efforts to fight this national epidemic, and look forward to working with Attorney General Pam Bondi, and I think she's on the President's Council to deal with opioid abuse. I want to work with President Negron, Speaker Corcoran, and the entire legislature to pass these proposals during the upcoming legislative session. And I ask that all of you call your House and Senate members and let them know the importance of dealing. They work hard to keep us all safe, and hopefully this will be another way that we can help them keep all of us safe. Now it's my distinct opportunity.
There you go. Stop it at 420.
Yeah.
So he doesn't talk very long, but he kind of covers a lot of ground. But as you said, I don't know how authentic all of it is. He skims over the top.
There's a lot of different places that we can start with this, but let's talk about what I hear him saying. Situation is that these opiate pills are the problem, right?
Right.
And if we can limit this supply down to a 3-day supply, then somehow magically people are no longer going to become addicted to them. Like there is some magical thing going on out there where
on day 4.
Yeah, on day 4 of your prescription, after you just had knee surgery or you had heart surgery or your whatever, a broken arm or a car accident or this or that, and they want to be able to regulate how you get through your pain, and they believe that only giving you 3-day supplies is going to allow you to not become another statistic to opiate addiction.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure there's some type of data that somebody presented to them at some point in time that said, hey, statistically, day 1, 2, and 3 are safer than day 4. If you think about it, it's like yeah. But I still don't, like, I don't buy into the whole thing for me.
All right, so let's move on to the next thing then, real quick. Law enforcement is on the front line
Right.
of dealing with addiction in the state of Florida.
Right.
And I can tell you, as a interventionist, as somebody who's been doing this for 11 years professionally, and have been to multiple counties and done infinite amount of interventions, many of them regarding pills, but to be honest, most individuals that are addicts are not just addicted to one particular thing,
Right.
especially when they get down to dealing with law enforcement or dealing with Jason coming at you to talk about what's going on in your life and an intervention. And so what I have found is that law enforcement they're the ones who don't want to deal with it. They will do everything in their power not to work with the interventionist to get the individual in a position to receive help. And it's not all their fault either. I mean, granted, there's a lot of paperwork that goes along with this process, but what I have found statistically here in the last couple of years is even just as hard as it is to get an officer to help somebody that needs the help, rather than waiting for them to commit a crime so they can just take them to jail, because that rings a whole bunch of other bells, and they would much rather do that. But we can get that in a minute. Is once an individual does get in a position to get help, whether it's at a detox facility or the hospital, St. Joe's, whatever it is, what I have found is the desire for these facilities to patient dump these people well before they ever have an opportunity to get any kind of addiction treatment or recovery help.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot of great cops in the area, a lot of great police officers, but I think if you were to poll them and say, is your job to be the front lines on addiction? I don't think most of them would answer yes. I think their job is law enforcement, which is, yes, does addiction lead to law breaking, or is there law breaking involved in that? Yes, but that's not dealing with addiction. That's just arresting criminals.
Right.
You're addressing it way over here, right? And so now we're saying, hey, we're going to spend $27 or $50 million to address an issue way over here, the way we've always addressed it. This is not new. This is actually old school, like Ronald Reagan, Nancy Reagan, just say no, 84, 88 approach to the drug epidemic.
Yeah.
I think then it was cocaine or whatever it was in the 80s, and now it's, marijuana sort of, because they started to legalize it, but the feds don't recognize it, but it's the opioids, here in Florida, such the pill mills and all that kind of stuff. So it's the hot topic, and then they leverage states of emergency to be able to get the funds that they need to release, to disseminate those to who they deem, and take, according to their wording in their document, whatever measures necessary to implement whatever they need to take care of this. But all the funds and proceeds are going to the end result, arresting agencies and the child protective. You're way over here. Like, you're already taking kids away. You're already putting people in jail. You're not dealing with addiction at that point in time. It's way on down the line. You're dealing with rock bottom stuff. And don't get me wrong. There's some people that have to go that route, but that's not the optimal way to deal with addiction. At least in my opinion,
statistically speaking, it's not.
Yeah.
And so the question is do we really have a crisis, a state of emergency in regards to this, number one? And number two, what's the point of having press conferences and meetings with people that may or may not have any kind of experience in dealing with everyday real life individuals seeking to get sober.
Yep.
And what are they looking at? Are they just, most of these individuals that you're hearing from a political position are people that a loved one has died and they've been through the system and they're robbing the neighbors for their DVDs so that they can get some more pills, and it's just a thing that is increasing.
Yeah.
But the reason why this is happening is not because of opiates.
Correct. Well, it's the same conversation we've had for years. Is removing drugs does not solve the addiction problem. It
Never
doesn't.
has.
Never has. You could take all the drugs and remove them off the face of the earth, and say, hey, we're never going to let people take medicine again. We're never going to have any drugs anymore. They're eliminated. We've shot them all into space. Nobody even has access to them. And guess what? The next day, you're going to have addicts running around doing stuff.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not pill mills, it's bath salts. They're making their own stuff, or meth, or whatever they come up with. If they don't have it around, they'll make something. Or it used to be we.
Right.
We got one of the doctors on here, Jeremy McConnell, said that when CVS announced last week that they were limiting supply to 7 days as kind of a CYA policy for them. And he also said that hospital dumping, the current healthcare reimbursement model incentivizes the treat and street practice.
Yes, I agree completely.
Yeah. So so that's what this is going back to fund. Because they're not taking any of this money that they've created this emergency that they've called an epidemic, if it's an epidemic, and said we're going to pull down all this money and jam it right back into the same old story of the same old stuff that's never worked before, and we're going to do it again. And you and I were joking earlier. I was like, so if you want to talk statistics of stuff that is addictive, that causes death, that you can deem as an epidemic, listed under things that people get addicted to are cigarettes and nicotine. If you go and do a study on how many people die each year from lung cancer caused by smoking, it's not even close to what you see as an opioid death situation on an annual basis. So why don't we call a state of emergency and pull down federal money to go after cigarette companies and stop smoking?
Right.
So I always go back to what's the real agenda? Right? What's the real agenda? What is everybody trying to do? Who benefits from this? Because they come on and they make these statements, and you've got two sides. You got one side that's over there going like this, saying, "Hey, we did a good job. We did what we thought was right." And I think a lot of them are well intended. I don't think they're bad people. I don't think Governor Scott's a bad person. He's done a lot of great stuff in the state of Florida, whether you voted for him or not.
Well, he does do things.
He does stuff, and he's taken action. But then you got the other side, which is the recovery community, which is who I really have a bigger bone to pick with, that at some point in time has said, whether you're in the religious side of the recovery position, whether you're in the secular 12-step version, whether you're in another spiritual version of yoga and whatever else, and the paid treatments and this and that, is that at some point in time somebody made a definition of addiction that suited somebody to make money off of it.
Right.
And everybody accepted it because it was an improvement from where it previously was, which was, hey, this is not a disease, it's not this, it's just a bunch of criminals, to, hey, we're going to call it addiction, we're going to call it a disease so that we can now hospitalize people and medicate people and make money off of people. And no one has stopped to ask the question, is this definition actually the real definition of what the issue is? Or have we settled on some type of lower lying definition that appeases people, or that we're appeased by, and never stop to challenge the status quo to say there's more involved here. There's more at stake here, and there's more to understand and express and experience here and explore than where we currently sit. And what I hear when I normally hear people talking is 12 steps, that's it. Jesus Christ, that's it. Judaism, that's it. Allah, that's it. Torah, that's it. psychology, that's it. And there's never this thing to take a step back and say, hey, all this is great. There's benefits from all this, but have we sold ourselves short in this conversation? And in doing that, have we left a lot of stuff on the table, aka solutions, aka resources, based on limited definitions and limited thinking and limited work that leaves everybody in this limited space of this revolving door that just keeps going around, causing these epidemics that just funnel more money back into the same hands and the same entities of the same people who've been doing it for years.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the same guys are making money.
Well, look at the, the whole marijuana thing here that's been approved for medical use. And so I've done some research since you had put that post up from Dr. Oz and watched that. And I thought that was very interesting. But I started to do some internal research into, who's dispensing this locally, who are the doctors, what did they have to do to get into this situation. And it's really interesting, but it's just a lot of the same people repositioning themselves to then get the funding now through these sources. There's a handful of doctors here in town and a handful of dispensaries. There's a new state license that you have to get once you've been deemed medically necessary, that you can use marijuana as a resource for whatever it is that you're going through. Now you have another state license, so that's fees and all these different things. And you look at the way all of this is set up, and it doesn't matter which way you turn, it all looks the exact same.
Mm-hmm.
And it has looked the exact same for a long period of time.
Yeah, it's the same old story.
And so when are we going to do something different?
Well, and that's the question, is when are people going to do that? Jeremy had another great comment, said the pain management field as a specialty wasn't in existence 20 years ago. Then their own leaders were found to be on dole to promote escalation of opioid use. Now they're the ones setting the policy for appropriate prescribing. He said, read no meds, offer procedures, but which in most cases are ineffective and come in with heavy price. So, I mean, the information's out there, and it's just a matter of, someone's got to get in and drive some of this. And unfortunately, until we challenge, and it's collectively, right? It's almost like campaigning and saying we're not going to accept this. Until people get sick and tired of being sick and tired with the system, it's going to keep doing what it's doing. And
creating criminals.
Right.
Destroying families.
Destroying families, creating criminals, and then the money keeps going to the child care department.
We have this plan to go to the hottest place on Earth.
That is the
harness
hottest,
the energy from the sun
that's
to develop popcorn, which
place
these
on
mobile
Earth
app
is in
will
this
allow us
office.
to pay our vendors, receive payments. We never have to stop doing business.
Whoa!
Where did that come from?
That was our first commercial break.
Thanks there. Yeah, that was interesting.
So, but we're getting, as Robin says, we'll take some of that money. There are over 8,000 Florida physicians now registered as marijuana prescribers.
Yeah,
So,
I looked it up on the map online,
Yeah.
Google, whatever, and it popped up with like a 3 or 4 where now you have to. So then now you go to this doctor,
Yeah.
you get seen by them, they do a whatever test they're going to do to prove that you have what you say you have, and which is all money or insurance, same process as it always has been, and then you have to apply for your license from the state as a user of the substance before you can then get it. What do you call it? Your card or whatever.
Yeah. Then you're just indoctrinated into that system.
Right, and it's the exact same system.
Yeah.
It could be concealed carry, exact same system. All these different government programs that are put into place for one particular reason, and that's just creating another stream of revenue for what?
Yeah. So, for people who are tuning into this, they're probably going to think we're on this big anti-government conspiracy theory rant.
No.
And that's not it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure we got to circle back on that.
Yeah.
Because even though I can camp out in that area...
Did Robin text you or something?
No.
That sounds like something that she would say,
I'm channeling Robin's thoughts.
Yes.
Because I can camp out in that spot. I can get over there and I can spend a lot of time online and get into these places called, there's this big conspiracy to, Hunger Games, the whole country. And there's some fun stuff to kick around with that. But I think more importantly, circle back for you and I to make clear is like, why are we passionate about this? Why is this perspective important to who you and I are and the work that we do when it comes to this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think what we found out, I know what I found out over the last 12 years, is that this has absolutely nothing to do with the substance that you're addicted to or that someone else is addicted to. It is so well beyond that in regards to addiction recovery treatment. And so what it takes is long-term investments into people. And that is where we get into the crux of doing the same old thing versus investing a large amount of money into a small amount of people.
Yeah.
So that those people actually get what the money was intended for, which was treatment, recovery. Right. It's on the other side. You should not be going through the system over and over and over again if you received the proper care. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
And so what we've found is that you cannot force people through this funnel and get this end product out that is going to justify the expense.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, the statistics are so low, for the...
A lot of... See, I think what America thinks, I think what the average Joe thinks is that it's because opiates are that much more addicting.
Yeah.
And that's not the truth.
It's worse. But if you go back and look at how they used to talk about marijuana back in the 70s,
yeah,
it would be a very similar conversation when they first went to classify, like whatever it was, 74, 73 is like this horrible thing. And it's always the next thing. Cocaine was that thing for a while, right? Then pot was again.
Crack.
Then crack came along, right?
80s.
And now it's the pills. And there'll be something else after this. The bath salts came out. People were eating people's face in Miami and whatever it was, right? Like there's going to be something else after this, and it could be something totally different. But the issue isn't the dope. The issue is not the dope. The issue is that we are breeding people who don't know who they are and have this huge gaping lack and need to figure that out. And our solution collectively as a society is medicate it in some capacity, right? And then if that doesn't work, or if we create Frankenstein out of this, right?
That's what we've done.
Yeah,
we've created people that eat other people's faces off.
Yeah. Now we'll put you through this system that's a broken system to try to fix you. Like, if you take a step back, like, everybody admits it's a broken system. I don't know if there's any people out there that, even the people that are involved, that say, like, they look at prisons and they look at the jail system and they look at the arresting system.
Yeah.
If you talk to police officers, they'll say, it's a broken system. So our idea is we're going to take a broken person, put them through a broken system, and somehow fix them. That's the solution. And so no one wants to stop and say, hey, let's cut it out. Let's Susan Powder this thing. Let's stop the insanity, right? I dated my age, but stop the insanity.
That's really funny.
And try something new, and open our minds up to something that's uncomfortable, different, and like you said, investing in the people and what it really takes to deal with this. And I went through. So, and the people that are online or watching or that do know me, they know a little bit of my story. But that was part of this. I went through this process.
Right.
Like I got to a place where I wanted to get clean. Didn't have any money because in my addiction I started to lose everything. So I had not a pot to piss in, very little income, enough to kind of live.
No puns.
Yep. And no puns with the pot. and researching online, trying to find a place to go. Can't find anywhere because everything's $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, or it takes insurance and another $10,000, which I didn't have because I'd gone to the place of not having any insurance. So the last thing for me to do was just keep going down this path until I got arrested. And then I get shoved into the system, which I'm very grateful that I'm okay, but if I look at all the people that were involved in that process, it is an obvious failure. When you're sitting in a room full of people and the people there are looking at you going, hey, there's 110 guys in this room, maybe statistically, maybe one of you will stay clean. That didn't have anything to do with like a recovery or restoration. They're just talking about stay off drugs.
Yeah.
Maybe one of you, maybe 1 out of 100. Then you take that maybe 1 out of 100 and say how many of those maybe ones out of 100 get any type of restoration and life back from a financial standpoint, from a work standpoint, from a marriage and family and all the other stuff. And it's even less than that.
Right.
It's 1 out of every 200 or 300. So, I mean, we're going to dump millions of dollars into 1 out of every 700 people, let's just call it, or 1,000 people, becomes a high-functioning member of society again. Like, it's lunacy. No one would, if you put that as a stock on Wall Street and said, hey, here's your potential return, no one in their right mind would invest in that.
Right.
Gary Vee would look at you and tell you you're the biggest idiot on the planet. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's buying that company.
Yeah.
But
He probably would say something else.
he'd probably say
but-
something else, drop a couple F-bombs. But,
Yeah.
and it would be great. But, just need some cannibal flocka. We get some good comments now. So, you gotta bring the humor to it. We have some friends watching that I love and have missed. I haven't gotten to see it recently. So this is the best part about this is I get to talk to some old school buddies like Jeremy, and Caesar's on too. But it's this crazy thing, and everybody's just accepted it as the way it is, and because no one really wants to look at it and deal with it for what it is, because in dealing with it for what it is, it takes a far grander investment than just money to get it done. It's the easiest thing to do is just throw a bunch of money and walk away. But the money doesn't fix it. It takes effort, people, and time.
Yeah.
That's the investment that most people aren't willing to make.
And the money's going to the wrong places.
Yes. Well, then you've got all the restrictions. I mean, I don't want to get on my high horse about certain industries, but it's like when you study a psychologist, for example, right? A licensed psychologist. The constraints put on them to be able to counsel somebody adequately almost takes them out of the position to be able to counsel anybody adequately.
No doubt.
One, they spend 90% of the time doing paperwork.
Yeah.
The other part is they can't say or ask or do most of the stuff that really needs to be done to help somebody.
Right.
So they have to like learn how to unauthentically almost dance around the issues and extract information, but there's certain lines they can't ever cross.
Well, I think they become conditioned to the old story, and they may have a desire starting out early, wanting to save the world, if you will, but after going through this tremendous work to be who they thought they wanted to be, they are just numb to it all, and now at that point it's just about, having people come in and we'll see you next week type of situation.
Yeah.
And there is no true, authentic restoration or any kind of way to really look and see if it's there, other than the fact that, marriages are wrecked in this country, families wrecked in this country, statistically, not all, but statistically.
Yeah.
Addiction recovery wrecked in this country, and we're not just talking, opiate addiction. We're talking pornography, gambling, alcoholism. We're talking about every kind of addiction that there
All
is.
the isms.
All the isms.
All the isms.
And so this is so much bigger than opiates. And there's no way that we can solve this problem with such a limiting point of view, such a finite focus on such a huge problem that's going on out there.
I love seeing some of the people who joined. One of the guys that's a VA, involved with the VA, he used as an example, said the VA is a perfect example. Is Brian. He said they have to follow a list of questions and not use what they haven't learned. Like they're constricted to you know, hey, I've got a checklist here I got to go down, and I can't really give you what you need. You can choose from my cart of stuff, you know, and then the goal, you know, the real, I don't know what the goal is. I don't want to say I know what the goal is, but the agenda appears to be get people from this addiction to this addiction, you know, when it's all said and done. You see the comments now?
Yeah, no, I'm looking at 'em.
Get some people on. So it's a frustrating. To me, it's the part of it that I can't stand watching is it's like watching a dysfunctional person or dysfunctional relationship as I'm counseling people or working with people, and then pretending everything's okay.
Right.
Like it'd be like if somebody came to me and said, "Here's a scenario. We're having some marital issues. Can you kind of take a look at everything?" And I take a look at everything, and I say, "It seems like everything's fine." And I make some really minor suggestions, like, you know, maybe like you know, comb your hair a little different tomorrow, and you know, buy your wife a new sweater. I'm not giving you anything that actually solves anything. It's just something new to go waste your time and run in circles till you come back the next time and pay me again.
Right.
So anyway, back to Governor Scott, and I guess some of the topics we're on before we run out of time. It's alarming to me in a number of different ways when I see these guys start throwing around the words epidemic and emergency so frivolously. Because although there are some major issues to tackle, the driver on this can't just be the math, you know, at this point in time, because there's other things in hand that are of far greater destructive consequence that are going on than what we're seeing there. And that's not to minimize the deaths that are taking place by opioids, because we do have a problem. But to just, you know, and anybody that kind of looks at this stuff, if you go read any of the articles in his submission of what he put into place and kind of look into it, the scary part for me when I read this stuff is that anytime they do this, it removes a lot of their rules.
Yeah.
Right? Like what it says is like, hey, we're creating a state of emergency. And the state of emergency isn't like, hey, there's an emergency, Jason needs help.
Yeah.
It's, hey, this state of emergency that I'm saying is a state of emergency really just removes all the rules and guidelines that I have to follow. So now I can disseminate money however I feel like it in the name of doing what's right based on my limited perspective of the information that I've gotten to recreate and repeat the same old story that we've had before.
Right. And what it does also is it opens up the floodgates of money.
Yeah.
To tap into now because you are in this quote-unquote state of emergency.
Yep.
And so it's like the gatekeeper of funds from on a state level to a national level, and it is just feeding the beast of what the individuals that are doing in office at that current moment in time.
So I'll look at it this way. If I were to analyze the system, right, the addiction treatment system and the whole process, it's an addict in and of itself.
Yeah.
Okay? So its behaviors, it's feeding on itself, it's addicted to itself and its own behaviors and its own destructive ways of doing things. And what we just did was, it'd be equivalent to saying, hey, we've got a major problem, this guy's a major drug addict, I just got you a check for $3 million, I'm going to give you a bunch of money.
Yeah, so we're going to solve all your problems.
We're going to solve all your problems. Here's a bunch of money, right? And so we just injected $50 million into an addict system. We just spiked the main vein, bro.
Yeah.
And gave it exactly what it needs to grow and expand and become worse than it already is, because there's nothing that they're doing that's changing the broken system. Right. That's my issue with it is. And nobody wants to take a step back and say, hey, and again, I get some of it. I understand some of it. They can't say like, hey, we're wrong. We've been wrong the whole time.
Well, just let's talk about this. Opiates. So it's a Schedule II drug. Marijuana.
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1 drug. I mean, and so what do you think that they're going to do? Go back and say, oh, we were wrong.
Yeah.
We're wrong about marijuana.
Well, that unwinds too much. mean,
or we're wrong about opiates because it went through the FDA, it was approved.
Exactly.
All the things that you're saying that we can't use marijuana for because it's not FDA approved, it hasn't been put through the process yet. Look at all these medications that have been put through the process that are causing well more harm than some of these other things. And
Well,
so
it reminds me of the old AA thing where when you learned earlier on, it was like, it's not the beer, it's not the wine. I'll just drink beer. You know, it's not the beer. I'll just drink on Tuesday nights.
no, I'll just go to NA
Yeah, I'll just go over here. I'll just go over there.
because I really just need to quit doing cocaine, not
It's not
drink.
this. It's just the opioids. So if we reclassify the opioids, it plays an emergency. It solves the problem. It's not that. It was marijuana. We'll classify it Schedule 1. But it wasn't the marijuana. It's the cocaine. And at the whole time, the system's in a state of denial, just like an addict.
Yeah.
And as long as it's in a state of denial, there's nothing you can do. And how do you do an intervention with an addict? Everybody sits down and puts an ultimatum down that says, we're not participating in this insanity anymore.
Yeah.
You can keep doing it self-destruct, but we're not participating in it. And it's only until the people who have leverage in these positions that really care and really want to work at it, and unfortunately you and I don't have millions of dollars or I'd spend them doing this, it's only until we position ourselves to create that intervention with the system that says we're done. We're done participating, that the reality will set in, the beast won't be fed, and it will die. And then we can actually create something better.
Right.
Then the infinite possibility of something grander than what we currently exist or experience can take place. But it's only when it's just like dealing with somebody else. And it's only when they've got to stop and admit that there's an actual issue, then accept that there's an actual issue and what the issue is before any work can be done on it.
Right.
And as long as everybody keeps participating in it, pretending that it's working.
That's what everyone's doing. Homeless, you know, all the different agencies in this town, the sex trafficking, the addiction issues, all these different issues, mental health issues that are here locally that I know personally because I've dealt with all of these industries. We even looked at doing something for women here not too long ago and came up against such a large amount of interference that they're making it impossible to help anybody in town.
Yeah. Well, because we've defined being able to help somebody has to fall under all these definitions.
Yeah.
And as long as you fall under these definitions and you meet these requirements, and as long as you meet these requirements, then you can receive these funds. And if you don't do that, then we're going to shut you down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay? So, again, what do you do? Like, at that point in time. But it's only when the people in the community get educated, and that's why, you know, people ask why we're doing some of this stuff. That's one of the reasons. Hopefully people watch this. Hopefully people listen. Hopefully people share. Hopefully it stimulates somebody to take it back and say,
well,
hey,
hope's a bitch and a beggar,
yeah,
so that's probably not going to work
that
very
won't
well
work there,
for you.
but maybe.
Right. Our desire for doing
for this
it is greater
is
things than just what we are currently doing to impact the people around us.
And somebody say, hey, we have to rethink this. We've got to, and I have to rethink my position within this. And there is a lot of power if everyone takes a look, an honest look at, and begins to understand who they are. Then they can start positioning themselves in a place of power that can change things.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily take money to change everything, but it does take a number of individuals who understand who they are to tap into the source power necessary to make the needed changes.
Yeah, it's an alignment of combined energy to overcome what was, aka the old story, which is constantly going in the background. It takes that combined effort of all sorts of people and organizations to then begin to make a change and do something different. Yep. And we certainly are not saying that we have the answers. We do know what works in regards to us and the people that we come in contact with, and we just enjoy talking about all things life restoration.
Yep.
and this is just some of the topics that were on the countertop this week, and our freedom from the boss allowed us to go a little deep.
Yeah.
And
we're not going to go too far over. I think we're about done.
oh yeah,
I think we're good. And we didn't go 2 or 3 hours. I thought this was going to be a 4-hour podcast. Maybe like a mini series, box set.
I mean, we could just take a break.
We could take
come back
callers.
to it. We could take callers. We could do all sorts of things.
We
But
do miss you, Robin, and it's not the same without you here.
No, that's for sure.
And if you've
There's no
never
doubt
tuned in
about
before,
it.
you need to tune in on the week where Robin's with us, because it's way better.
way better.
Way better when Robin's here. But does anybody, we're still getting Facebook stuff, does anybody have any questions or anything else? We appreciate everybody tuning in tonight and checking in with us. We miss a lot of you guys. There's some names on here I haven't seen the faces to in a long time, so I just want to say hey to Brian, hey Jeremy, a couple other people I see join. Man, there's one guy on here I haven't seen him in a couple of decades, Brandon. I don't know if he's still on or not, but wow. C's, good to hear from you, man. I think I'm not missing it. Alex got on. Sean Roach got on. Look at that. Nice little list of people. So, hey, and even if you watch this later on and we're not live, if you want to leave comments or questions, we'll be glad to still communicate with you. Spread the word. But we are all about keeping it authentic and being the best version of ourselves we can possibly be, and we want that for each and every person too.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, we're sharing our testimony, and we test everything. And,
On ourselves.
yes, we do. We test
Yeah.
everything, and we experience all sorts of cool stuff. And
You can consider us your personal test dummies.
yes,
There you go. Crash test dummies.
yes. But
So-
we appreciate you joining and spending some time with us, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good one.
What do you think? That'll do it.
Good.